So why would I rebuild this brake cylinder rather than just buy a complete replacement? Well, when I went to go buy the cylinder, it was over 30 bucks and the kit was about $6. So you know what? This time I decided I'm going to go ahead and rebuild it, save the money, and put it into anything else. Some of the process rebuilding this cylinder is a little tricky, but I'm going to show you how to make a few tools so you don't have to buy anything and you can get the job done right. The first thing we're going to have to do is get this bleeder screw unseized, and of course you know this always happens. You can try putting penetrating fluid on this, but it never works. This technique always works. Pour some old motor oil into a can and just drop it in and let it soak for a day or two. Notice I pulled the pistons and the spring out, and you just drop it into the oil. Let it soak, soak, soak. In a day or two, just go ahead and pull it out of the oil and just get a rag and clean it all up really good. Now you can try a combination wrench, but it usually doesn't work. That's why I take a 6-point socket and I take it and tap it onto the bleeder screw. If the bleeder screw's already stripped, just use a smaller socket. Now to get some leverage to fight against, I use this 1/2-inch extension and then go ahead and hook up my ratchet and a good pull and got it. I'm always glad when this works, because if not, you're going to go to the store and just get a whole new cylinder if you snap this thing off. So I just take my time, I work it back and forth, then I take a screwdriver and go ahead and pry the socket off. Now at this point, if you wanted to, you could pull the entire bleeder screw out and replace it with a new one if you wanted to. What's really important is when you put the bleeder screw back in, when you put it back on the car, put some grease all around it so it doesn't seize. Now the next step is where a lot of people use specialized tools to hone out this cylinder, but I just roll up a couple pieces of sandpaper to the right diameter and I insert it and I squeeze the ends and I just work it back and forth until the cylinder is completely honed out with the sandpaper. Typically, I have found that they're not really in that bad a shape normally. You want to make sure there's no grooves in the cylinder. If there are light grooves in the cylinder, you can keep using the sandpaper or get a hone. I move it back and forth until I'm satisfied with the surface. Now when I do pull the cylinder out, the rubber cap comes off really easy. Now this rubber part is definitely more difficult to get off, so I use a screwdriver carefully. I don't want to mar the metal. Oftentimes, these rubber washers are a little brittle, so they'll actually snap, and then they come off really easy then. Once you do get this seal off, you're going to want to clean the piston on something like a wire wheel. Once you get everything all cleaned up nice and pretty on the wire wheel, it'll be time to put the new seals in. Well, here's what that $6 kit looks like. It's 4 rubber pieces and they're sure in a lot better shape. Before we put the washers in, we're going to go ahead and clean the base and just kind of get it all nice and clean, because clean parts are kind of cool. Just make sure where the rubber is going to meet that those surfaces are nice and clean and that all the crusty corrosion is out of the way. Now this next step is a little bit on the painful side to get this new washer on. Whatever you do, don't use a metal object like a screwdriver, because you could tear the rubber. But actually, I have a technique that's a heck of a lot easier than this. We're going to make a special tool out of this old caulking tube to expand the washer. Once you get this plastic part out of the caulking tube, go ahead and grind off the end so it perfectly matches the top of this piston. Now the next step is a little bit like magic. You take the seal and you stretch it over this, and you can see how it expands, and this is going to drop right onto the piston. Now once we get it, we'll have to adjust it to make sure that everything is in the proper place and that it's properly aligned. There we go. Now it's starting to go. And that wasn't really so bad with the right tool. So go ahead and do this for both pistons. Okay, now let's take another look at this. So you put the tool on and you just expand and keep expanding the seal until it eventually drops over, and then you just kind of work it into place. Now we're going to go ahead and put the outer ring on, and just remember that you don't want to use any sharp tools. Use something like a pencil and just kind of work it in with your hands. That's the best way. Another useful application for being able to rebuild these cylinders is on these old vintage cars, where sometimes it's difficult to find a new cylinder, but a little easier to find these kits that you can rebuild the cylinder. Once you've got all the rubber pieces properly aligned, it's time to go ahead and put the rubber pieces back into the main housing. Just kind of, again, like I said, push and pull with your hands as much as you can. Only use a pencil, never ever a screwdriver. Once you have that side done, go ahead and put the spring in the middle and then put the piston in the exact same way that you did before. So you're done rebuilding this brake cylinder. I hope you enjoyed some of these new techniques. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.